So welcome everybody to another episode of Chocolate Travels. I'm here with Matt and Elizabeth from Harvest Chocolate. So welcome, Matt and Elizabeth. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. We're excited.
Yes. So we want to know all about Harvest Chocolate. And the first thing we want to know is how you started. So from what I saw on your website, you guys actually have a culinary background, which is surprisingly quite unique in the chocolate world. A lot of chocolate makers over the years that I've met come from completely different backgrounds. Surprisingly, not a lot of pastry chefs and chocolatiers become chocolate makers. And I find that interesting because I started off as a chocolatier as well. And I always had a passion for the fine chocolate and the craft chocolate, but it seemed a lot of my colleagues didn't really care about that stuff. So, how did you come across craft chocolate working in the industry, in the food industry? How did it change your perception of the chocolate you used? I'm sure you used high quality couvertures where you worked at. So how did that all come together?
Yeah, so we both have culinary backgrounds. We both have culinary degrees. We both spent about a decade working in fine dining restaurants, mostly like Michelin star restaurants, things like that. So very familiar with food, food production, chocolate in general. I think one of the things that came out of that was just knowing how to create products food products that people want to buy. The difference is, ours is packaged now versus like being on a plate, but you still have to put all the pieces together. But I think it gives us a lot of just knowledge of the food industry and, how to run production and health and sourcing and things like that. So Elizabeth was on the pastry side and I was on the savory side. So she has way more experience in chocolate, tempering chocolate, making chocolate, truffles, bonbons, things like that.
Okay. So Elizabeth, how did you come across craft chocolate and what did you think of it compared to the chocolate that you used to using?
It's really interesting because my entire career before this, I was a pastry chef. And we always used one kind of chocolate and didn't really question where it came from. It was Valrhona. So,
which is a good brand,
It is a good brand, yeah. And it's just, you kind of didn't really question chocolate outside of that. That was the chocolate you used. And so, many years later is when we actually started learning about where chocolate comes from and that it grows on a tree and it has this beautiful background. And that chocolate can taste so much different and just kind of the craft that goes into it. So, a lot of my previous experience with chocolate was very just like technical, like tempering and making chocolate decor, like, chocolatiering. And so you didn't as much, and in my case, think about the other side of that, of really where it's coming from, the craft behind it, everything that goes into making chocolate, because it was usually just an ingredient in whatever you were making.
Right. Chocolate is chocolate, right? Like dark chocolate, you know what to expect and that's it.
Yeah. And it was kind of formulated in your recipes, like more so on percentage, like this recipe calls for 72% chocolate or this one calls for 52% chocolate. Whereas now, the chocolate that we make, we don't necessarily focus on the percentages as much. We focus on the origin, where it comes from, the tasting notes that are different, and kind of trying to tell that story, which is why we created Harvest Chocolate. We love kind of showing the harvest behind chocolate, where it comes from, and how it just connects to just loving chocolate.
So was it you that got into craft chocolate? Like, how did you come across it? Did you just try some brands once or see something on TV?
I actually met another chocolate maker here and I worked for them for a couple of years. And I kind of started doing some traveling and visiting some cacao farms, and just like all connects to our background of, wanting to know where our food comes from and building relationships with the farmers we worked with in restaurants, and then kind of, carrying that over into chocolate as well.
I think it's weird how chefs will put a ton of effort into sourcing all of the other ingredients in the restaurant. Right? Even pastry chefs too, they know all the fruit, right? They know the farmers, they know these things. They're shipping something from the other side of the world because it's the best thing that they can find.
Right, like even the butter, right? But
but then chocolate is like, we just use Valrhona. And
don't question it. That's the thing. Yeah, that's what always interests me is, it's interesting for me because when I was in pastry school, that's where I came across a job ad for a chocolate sommelier, and I looked into it, and the person introduced me to all the fine chocolates, and I thought, wow. So I went into it with a little bit of a different view. But when I would talk to my colleagues about it, they didn't seem to care. It was like, chocolate's chocolate, milk, white, dark. And I was always fascinated by that. I'm like, but there's more out there. Doesn't that interest you? And they said, no. I was like,
we thought that would be a good way for us to sell is like, we have friends who are chefs, right? They run, hospitality organizations. They might,
those people.
they might be in charge of 20 restaurants or something, and like, we thought we could just reach out to them and be like, oh, like, hey, like buy this chocolate, but
an easy switch.
Yeah. Kind of don't really care. And then the price is the next big hurdle.
Right.
So it's kind of just, it hasn't clicked yet. I think it will. Eventually, they're going to start looking for new ways to differentiate, new ways to kind of show different products and highlight different things and different flavors. So if there's any pastry chefs out there looking to expand and differentiate with their chocolate, and how we're happy to talk about how to do it is, I think, the important part.
And a new way of just telling a story through through the food that you're making. It's got I think, for meaning.
Chefs always want to wow their customers, right? Look at how this tastes incredible. This tastes so different. Well, there's this whole world of chocolate now that they can play with, right? If they're willing to go for that challenge. Price is definitely an issue. Yeah, I think that's, you talk to a lot of chocolate makers and it's all about selling right to the consumer in bar form, right? And we don't hear a lot about pastry chefs using this nice high quality craft chocolate. That's definitely another untapped area.
Yeah,
I think it's untapped. I mean, if you think about, there's that old adage of like, you have to have a chocolate dessert on the menu, and every restaurant does, but like, what if you have like the upgrade chocolate dessert? Like, no, we're using harvest chocolate, and like the chocolate comes from here and it tastes like this, and you might pay a little bit more for it, but
experience.
And the clientele is interested in that. I think it makes sense.
I mean, even charcuterie boards, right? They always have a cheese platter. They have that option of a cheese and origin chocolate platter, different origins. That might really get people thinking. And
I like that.
Flavors, like I just think about like the Tanzania origin. It's just like so bright and or like we have a Guatemala one that we're bringing back in, and it's really fruity and light and kind of strawberry, and like the difference between like our Ghana origin right now is just so chocolatey classic that you would think about. There's just so many different ways that you can play with it, and it's just as complex. And as far as the production, like wine can be, and anywhere along that production, you can change and alter the flavor. And so, I think right up chef's alley. I don't know.
Yeah,
I would be into it if I
keep talking to your friends. Keep convincing them. I could talk about this forever, but let's keep going. So, what point did you decide to create your business? I mean, did it seem like a big risk? Like, let's try this new thing, or did it feel like, no, this is something I think we can manage? And
I think we always kind of were looking for something that made sense as far as having our own business. Obviously, our experiences in restaurants, but strangely, it never really appealed to us to start our own restaurant.
But all the headaches.
Yeah, exactly. We've been in that kind of environment. We just didn't want to recreate it ourselves, I guess. But I think, the more we learned about chocolate, we were like, well, this is a cool story that we want to just kind of keep sharing with people.
And everybody loves chocolate, so that's great. Like as long as you love chocolate, like people are generally happy, and that's fun to be around. But
that word makes people smile, so
it does.
Yeah,
we started small, just kind of. We've both been a part of a couple of like restaurant openings and businesses that sometimes you can bite off more than you can chew. We've seen that a few times, and we just wanted to avoid that. And so what we did was build our customers first. So started super small out of our kitchen and selling at farmers markets, and then we went to a community kitchen. Now we're in this space, but we're subleasing this space with another business. So our risks and our costs have been low, but we've been able to really just like get close to our customers and talk with them a lot. And, we're always just trying to be in front of them and see how they react to the chocolate and what it tastes like and how we're describing it. And I think that's super important before then you take those bigger risks of like more machinery and a larger space and that.
So when you were working at the high-end restaurants, was that also in Michigan or in somewhere else?
All over. We were both in Chicago for a while, New York City. Matt was in San Francisco, Napa Valley area. So we've done a lot of moving around.
Okay. But you guys are from Michigan or?
I'm from Michigan. He's from upstate New York. So.
Oh, okay. How do the locals view craft chocolate? Because, in some places, let's say California, people are much more open to these new ideas and things like that, as opposed to other places. So how did your customers at the farmers market receive your chocolate? What did they think about what you're doing? Did they understand it? What sort of market did you have there?
Some people get it like right away. There's a big kind of age differences in the way people react to chocolate. So like the kind of younger-ish, I'm not trying to like put people in boxes, but like the younger they are, they typically like understand what you're doing and who you are, like really quickly. The older you get, chocolate turns into this like decadent kind of sinful treat that you can't get away from, or that they don't want to even get near. Like there have been people who walk by and they're like, I'm not even
do that.
After one bite, they'll be knee deep in it or something. Yeah.
And it kind of works along that spectrum of like the younger to older. The younger they are, they're like, oh yeah, delicious.
And not always.
Right. Not always. There's exceptions to everything. But in general, they've been really receptive. We kind of identified that as a problem because we are in a small rural town. And so I think the people go into it and they're like worried about that. And so what we did kind of structured the business model to insure against that. So we sell online and then we sell through retailers. So we're in Ann Arbor and Detroit and Chicago and Toledo and Grand Rapids. We're reaching into these larger cities where like you can reach those, but we're in this small town where now this small town can have the benefit of their own chocolate maker and it smells like chocolate in here. And
I think too, a lot of education goes into it. So we do a lot of tastings with other local businesses around here, kind of different pairings where two local businesses can come together and kind of showcase what we both do. It makes it more kind of approachable, and you get chocolate in their mouths and they're like, wow, this is different. This is cool. And then you tell them the story and it's like, it's a learning experience. I think people really, really are enjoying.
Yeah. So for someone like me and probably you guys and a lot of makers and other people who are into craft chocolate, I think a lot of us want to be there when the consumer's enjoying it, because a lot of them might purchase your bar in a store in Chicago, take it home. Maybe they don't know anything about Beat the Bar and they might miss it, and if only you were there to kind of explain it, it opens their eyes a bit. So it's really nice. I think it's crucial to do stuff like that, to have the interaction, the tastings, all that sort of stuff. Especially
when it is such a new concept for a lot of people, being able to kind of tell them a little bit more while they're tasting it, I think is really helpful.
What would you say were the greatest challenges you faced early on? Coming from a culinary background, did you I could foresee all this, so nothing was really a surprise? Or is there anything that specifically to chocolate making was a surprise for you?
I think the biggest thing was Elizabeth had worked with another business that works in chocolate, and through that had signed non-compete clause. Okay. So we had to wait a year after she left before we could actually launch the business. And that caused just a bunch of just problems, and like that we had to work with a lawyer to understand what we could do and couldn't do. Things like that. Yeah. And if you think about it, it's like, she's worked her entire life with chocolate, and now all of a sudden somebody puts a paragraph in, 10 pages of documents, and now you can't earn a living that way for a year.
Right.
So, that was a bigger challenge than I think we thought, and waiting. But once that's over, it actually, I think, helped in that it gave us a lot of time to plan and test and get ready.
That maybe a lot of people wouldn't have had otherwise. So in that way, we felt very prepared when we were able to kind of just release and go for it.
Yeah, because when you actually have the business going, every day you're thinking about, bills and everything like that. So you had a year to kind of just focus on fine tuning everything,
Right.
which is a good point. Now, what origins do you currently use? And did visiting these origins change your perspective on chocolate? So it sounds like you visited before you started making chocolate. Is that correct? Or was it kind of all mixed?
A little mixed here and there, yeah. So the origins that we carry from Haiti, Pisa, Costa Rica, we don't have Nahua from Costa Rica.
Yeah. That's a really nice one.
Cayapis River from Ecuador. Actually, we just finished that up, so we're in the process of switching that one.
Okay.
And then origin from Ghana, actually. So
Abokfa.
Abokfa. I always mess that one up.
We've been to all of them.
Right.
We've been to Costa Rica, to Nahua. We actually, friends of ours who own a coffee shop in town, source their coffee beans from there.
Okay.
Same family. They do the coffee side, and then they put us in contact with some that grow the cacao. But yeah, we just got back from Hawaii. Went out there with Kahui Estate and spent a week there because it's the only state in the U.S. that grows cacao. So learned a lot through the harvest of like what quality beans look like. What does the fermentation look like? And I think it's just experiencing it changed a lot of what we understand. But visiting origins is definitely something that's really important to us, to be able to see where it comes from and meet the farmers. And there's just kind of, I think, some transparency that you can only get by going there and visiting and working with the producers.
Do your customers ever approach you about those sort of ideas? Do they ever ask you about, is this ethical?
I don't know that they ask a lot. I think sometimes they jump to it.
Okay.
But I think that's part of like kind of the brand and what we've been, lots of pictures and lots of imagery and showing. Right. Some people do. And I always like that question. Like the people that do ask it, it's the very first question. Where do you get your cocoa beans from? So always happy to answer that question of where they come from and how we get them. And it's a big challenge, I guess, knowing what's happening on the other side of the world where the beans are being grown. So that's where we really like to have the close relationship with, who's producing them, who's importing them, how are they getting here, where are they making their money, or things like that.
And trying to learn just that side of the chocolate process that of course, since, chocolate makers aren't at origin, we don't have that expertise in a lot of ways. So being able to work with people that do have that. So when we went to Hawaii, we were with Dan from Cacao Services and Dylan from Manoa. And so just kind of, trying to fill that gap between chocolate makers and producers and just showing them the other side of it and kind of trying to bring it together a little bit. That's huge for us. And it's something we kind of want to keep pushing the limit on as much as we can, but that definitely is a over time goal that we'll have to keep working towards.
Right. It'll help obviously you guys, and then you can obviously share that with your customers and just keep upping the education.
Feedback loop between, I think, the chocolate makers, at least here, and then the farmers and the producers at origin is super important, because sometimes, like you could get a flavor profile or something or some characteristic that you don't like, and then you can go to them and you say, hey, where did this come from? And they'll go, oh yeah, we did this. And then, you can work with them to fix it, or that's the way it is.
Right.
But understanding that because they're there, they're doing it, they're putting in the hard work, and, it's hot, and cacao pods are heavy.
Labor.
Yeah.
We had a brief, just little view of it because we were part of a class that was doing an actual harvest. And of course, we were students where you're not out there quite as long as the real producers would be, but just a glimpse into it. It's hard work. It's really hard work.
Yeah. What would you, how can customers know whether it's your chocolate or just in general, people ask, how do I know if this chocolate's ethical? What would you tell them to, give them pointers to know if a brand or a chocolate bar is sourced with ethical cacao?
I think it's hard to tell sometimes. And I think it's easy for some companies to hide, unfortunately. So bigger companies who are trying to be, on the ethical side of things, it's easy to hide. But we were talking about it earlier, just kind of maybe doing a little bit of research, going to the website and how are they talking about their chocolate? Are they talking about where it's coming from? Are they talking about the origin? Is it on the packaging anywhere of where the cocoa beans are coming from?
Yeah.
I think those pieces are a piece of it, a piece of the puzzle.
I always look for like the story behind the company, like where did it come from? Who are the people that are making it? Why do they exist? I think that's important. And then I think another one too is just price. If you're
that's a good indicator. Yeah.
If you're in the checkout line and maybe that package looks really nice, but it's $2, like there's something in that supply chain that is being taken advantage of.
Someone got it.
Yeah. Or even nowadays, even $4, $5, right? It's, might not be a really high quality cocoa bean and it might not be ethical either.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good point is, I understand consumers, they might get annoyed and feel like it's a lot of work to go to websites and research products, but if that's something you value, if that's something you're concerned about, you're always better off knowing than guessing, and referring to a certification or something like that. And nowadays it doesn't take much. You go in the grocery store and you have your phone. Oh, this is the brand. Let me look at their website. It takes 2 minutes really to see what it is you need to look for. So those are good points. So you have a unique approach to making your single origins that I saw. You call them snacking chocolate, and they're not in a bar form, they're in a bag with little pieces of chocolate. So what is snacking chocolate, and why did you decide on this format of selling your single origin chocolates?
So the snacking chocolate, it's little bite-size chunks, we'll say, of chocolate that we have bagged in resealable bags. We think it's perfect, like midday little pick-me-up that you have. Matt always likes to say it's the replacement of the like bad chocolate you keep stored away in your cupboard, right?
It's okay to be eating chocolate chips out of your cupboard. Everybody's you can also upgrade that, or for your chocolate hiding spot. Those are really important too. It's really good. You can just get in there and grab a couple of pieces.
Right.
And snacking chocolate is because that's what we're really doing with chocolate anyway, right?
Yeah, I think it's it's nice to elevate chocolate as something more sophisticated because everyone thinks it can't be sophisticated, right? But at the same time, you don't want it to be too pretentious, right? That doesn't appeal to everybody to be having chocolate, on a silver platter every day, right? Yeah. So it's nice to see other ways of makers being creative, of thinking of reaching different types of consumers, right? Because a lot of consumers appreciate fine foods, but in different ways sometimes, right?
Yeah, I think too that's part of it. It's just like we don't always like the way that a chocolate bar eats. Like you take a chocolate bar, you break off a piece, and then you've got a broken chocolate bar that's wrapped up in packaging that in some ways is kind of awkward. Maybe you're left with like a crumbled up
weird shape or the thing tore and you can't.
Yeah. And then you throw it in your cupboard and it's almost like there's trash in there. So we really love just being able to, reach into a bag, have a bite or two of chocolate, seal it up, come back to it later. It's just, I think it creates an approachability that's maybe the chocolate bar doesn't have.
And your flavored chocolates look very interesting. It's not just cinnamon or simple. It's a bit more complex than that, it seems like. So was this something that, over the years, maybe you have a visual of a dessert you used to make and how can I transform that into a chocolate? Is that sort of how it worked? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. Yeah. So one, for example, we have a cinnamon custard chocolate bar and it's a vegan almond white chocolate. And then
that sounds really good.
Yeah. So it's very like rich and custardy, honestly. And then we put cinnamon sugar on top. And my grandmother used to make custard pie when I was a kid, and it was the 80s. So, she'd whip up a couple really simple ingredients, some milk, some eggs, splash of vanilla, throw it into the microwave because it was the 80s and that's good. and she'd cook it and then, sprinkle the top with cinnamon sugar. And I loved it. It was so good. We loved the simplicity of it and how comforting it was. And so we wanted to kind of bring that to a chocolate bar that was just kind of one example of where it comes from. So that's one of our favorites. It's a really good one.
And it's also just in that, coming back to the chef background, seasonality, and that we don't want to just have our tastes and our flavors and our moods change throughout the year.
Especially in Michigan.
We're in Michigan and the weather's moody. We always kind of like to base it on the mood of where we live in Michigan. Summers are dark and cold, and so we usually try to bring a lot of citrus and brightness to it.
Winters are dark.
Right, winters are dark.
Not
Summers are hot, sunny, and there's really great fruit here in Michigan. So a lot of our summer seasonal bars end up being fruit-based, and that's just kind of the way, it's more of just who we are and where we live and we want to eat, and hopefully others think the same.
Okay. What other flavored bars do you currently have right now?
Let's see. We have a strawberry rhubarb bar, which actually is a white chocolate also. We found in the summer, we tend to do a lot of white chocolate because it's like a blank canvas.
Right.
And there's so many good fruits this time of year that it's really easy.
White chocolate is like the equivalent of whipping cream or custard, right? You can pretty much mix anything into it.
Yeah. So we source local strawberry and rhubarb, and I guess this is an example of where kind of our chef background comes in, is that we take fresh rhubarb and we poach it because you want to be able to cook it, and then we dehydrate it, make it into a powder because anything going into chocolate needs to be on the drier side. So then we add that into the chocolate and you get that like bright kind of tart rhubarb flavor and mix it in with strawberries, and it's just tastes a lot like strawberry rhubarb pie. So that one's one of our...
Good for you for doing all that work, doing it from scratch.
It is a lot. It's not quite that labor intensive, but we like
nowadays it's easy to buy the powders and the dried fruit, but that takes dedication. What are your future goals for your company? What plans do you have? Is there anything coming up that you kind of wanted to share? Where do you see it going?
Good question.
A lot of things.
You're creative people, so you have a lot, I'm sure.
One thing we're working on is sourcing more of any sort of inclusion products locally. Like a lot of nuts grow natively here in Michigan, and they're not super easy to come across to buy. So that's something I'm looking at. Like, instead of just buying random almonds from... You
mean they usually get exported instead of being able to?
I don't know that there's a lot being grown here to sell. Like hazelnuts grow natively here, and I found some, and they're delicious. So working on just kind of sourcing those things and like getting the fruit that's in season and drying it ourselves and processing it, but you got to get ahead of it and that. And then small chocolate makers, it's just the two of us. We got to figure out ways to streamline and be more efficient, where it doesn't impact the quality of the chocolate. So using machinery or, outsourcing work or things like that, so that like we're not putting labels on everything, and kind of just, that's really like the bigger plan of doing that, so we can just be more efficient and not have to work as hard. Streamline,
efficient, doing the things that you really need to do, the creative aspects, actually sourcing, making products.
We had just toured a bigger factory when we were in Hawaii. Of course, they have huge ball mills and pre-refiners and huge machinery where they can do, hundreds of kilos at a time. And of course, it's not really our goal, but they're just, efficiency of being able to make chocolate a little bit faster than we can. Finding ways where we can combine maybe some ideas that come from there with, a smaller batch, which is what we want to stick with. Because
when it comes to, you guys know, obviously in the kitchen, it's all about not trying to switch gears as often, right? Kind of getting things going, especially in chocolate, when you have to time what you do according to the chocolate,
Of
what am
course,
depending on, is it a coming out tempered and fresh, I can use it for this, versus if it's kind of over tempered now, what can I use it for? So it's a lot of time management, a lot of switching gears can delay everything. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're on the chocolates time watch, not
Yeah.
our own. So yeah,
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
does. We're on that.
Okay. Excellent, wonderful. And you said that earlier you do offer tours and tastings. That's something you do regularly, or people can book them? How does that work?
Yeah, so we do them pretty much all year. We've done some with breweries, we've done some with wineries, local coffee shops here. What else have we done? A whiskey pairing.
Mm,
And then we've done some here at our space too. So we're always kind of moving around based on where those tastings are, but we try to keep it kind of fun and interesting. And
Yep.
harvestcraftchocolate.com. If you want to check out what's coming up for any sort of events that we're doing, it's always there.
wonderful. And where do you ship? Do you ship only in the States? How does that work? How can people contact you and get a hold of your chocolate?
The website again, harvestcraftchocolate.com. We ship US and Canada. We just added the Canadian shipping.
Okay, nice. Well, thank you very much. It was really, really nice to meet you guys, to hear your story. And I wish you a lot of success with what you're doing. Sounds like you're very passionate.
thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. Wonderful. Well, have a great evening and I'll talk to you later. Take care.
Yeah, you too.
Good.
Bye.
Thank you.
Download the free Bean to Bar app to connect with incredible chocolate makers from around the world. Also be sure to visit beantobarworld.com, your portal for all things fine chocolate, virtual tastings, free learning resources, research, and much more. Subscribe to the newsletter to stay in touch and donate to the free app and free resources here. Contact me for any chocolate-related questions you may have.